Mute. Good to go at any point.
Okay, we'll call to order the planning commission meeting for August 7th, 2024. Roll call.
Chuck Howard, Ken Slaymaker, Vice Chair Ursula Kruzalek, Chair Cindy Olson,
Here.
Caitlin Maxwell, here, Jefferson Lynch.
Okay, we'll need approval of the agenda, and we'll need to add, not add an item, change A to a public hearing on the CUP for the construction office trailer. So a motion that includes that change. Just say move. So moved.
So move to adjust the agenda to include A saying public hearing.
Okay, all in favor, yes? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, approval of the minutes for June 5th, 2024. Need a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Also,
Okay, any changes, comments? I've read through it so fast, I don't think it's Anyone?
It was Dylan. I wasn't here last time, it was totally Dylan.
Okay, all in favor? Yes? Opposed? No. Okay. Yeah, I did. I texted you that copy. Here, just. Okay, for the record, she arrived. Got it. Okay. Next item is if there's any conflict of interest in any agenda items with the commissioners. Okay, so no conflicts. Public comment. What that is we allow public comment for anybody that's sitting in the audience that wants to make a public comment that's not on something on the agenda. Right now, we don't have anybody signed up or anybody here that wants to do it.
nope, and I don't have anyone online. So.
Okay, staff update.
Sure, I wanted to just mention a couple of items. First, as probably everyone knows, our Assistant City Administrator John Kane has left to be the town administrator for Netherlands. So we'll be posting that position before too long. And so anyway, picking up all this slack. Just want to let you know in case you hadn't heard. The second thing I wanted to note is that there's officially a new committee that we've established, Sites and Facilities. It's functioned as kind of a volunteer committee in the past. It wasn't under the city's umbrella officially, and it's kind of been dormant for a few years. But essentially, they're tasked with reviewing, monitoring, making recommendations for all of the city's facilities, like the cemetery, like the hose houses, water wheel, et cetera, et cetera. And I bring that up just to note that we are still, basically there's vacancies for anyone who's interested in joining. If you know anyone who wants to join Sites and Facilities, to get a letter of interest, if they haven't already, to Wonder. I think that's going to be pretty exciting. It will help manage some of our resources. We've spent a lot of resources on to preserve and protect.
So it'll be done like planning commission, various boards, stuff like that.
Right, yeah, it might be more similar to variance board where they may not be monthly or nearly monthly with a set meeting date. It'll probably maybe be quarterly with like a annual review of sites and facilities, where we'll go out and look at them, make any recommendations, notes, things like that. And then if it required, for example, like work done to it, we may take it to HPRC for that review. If there's no major work needed, just some minor repairs on the inside, for example, we just pass on public works as would be required. Let's see. Speaking of boards, we do still have opening for planning commission. So I don't know if we've got any letters of interest for that.
We haven't.
We have a few vacancies.
Okay, do we have an opening for the board member or the alternate still? Or did these guys submit theirs to be appointed to the board?
I received nothing for
Katie?
appointment.
So just a reminder, if you're interested in being a regular member, then submit that letter of interest at your convenience. And then we'd be recruiting for an alternate if
Right,
that's the issue.
right.
And we
Okay.
have variance board, NPCs also, HPRC, maybe one for all.
HPRC is one, plus two alternates technically, because that's a 5-person board. We currently only have 4 members and no alternates.
Okay, so is there a council meeting on Monday?
Yeah, we have it scheduled for the next meeting, it's the 26th.
Okay.
For letters to be reviewed by council for appointments.
Okay.
So if you're interested, you have a little time yet. So I just wanted to mention.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's great.
Because the date makes a difference.
So that's all of the boards and openings, things like that. Wanted to mention that I'm working on all of the maps we talked about, like the 3-mile plan. Just trying to get all of the annexed parcels into that and then put it together. That should be coming pretty soon. And then we'll present it here, then take it for ratification by council. A parking plan was recently adopted by council. There was a few minor updates to residential parking program, to paid parking areas, a big change. And this, to note, is along Riverside Drive near the Argo. We've made the portion between 23rd Avenue Bridge and Gilson no parking, because with the mountain bike park opening soon, we had some concern that council had concern that there would be parking issues along that stretch. Everything east of that, the residential areas, we've officially designated as residential parking, like some of the other residential zones. Again, hoping that mountain bikers wouldn't be parking in that residential neighborhood, protect the parking in that area, because it's already invested. If anyone's interested, I can send along the updated plan. Let's see.
It's online, right? So we can just.
Yeah, and speaking of online, yes, it's not live quite yet. I don't know what's going on, but we are going to have a brand new website that works really well soon. Like, we've gotten all the basic info on that website. It's just some of the back end security things are having issues, DNS certificates and things.
People being able to find the site and all.
So like right now, if you type it in, it still goes to the like old free state site that we've been operating off of, which hasn't really been updated in a few years. But when this is working, it will have all the brand new information, updates, things like that, for projects, for events, for.
Right forms, correct information, current
Who's working on
stuff.
that?
All of us have our own pages.
Yeah, so I'm doing all the like variant stuff, historic preservation stuff, planning stuff. Wonder's doing all the admin, some clerk things.
Licensing, permitting, liquor, marijuana.
Eventually we'll get all the
STR.
public works and water and sewer and all that on there. There will be a news, like a lot of people are signed up for notifications now. Eventually we'll transition to this new website. So just mentioning it for the record, there will be a new like subscription thing that will send out any like press releases, events, things like that. So once it's live, we'll send out a notice to everyone saying it's live. Then I'll be looking for any feedback, things like that we can add to make it.
Yeah, recommendations or stuff missing. Any help we can get would be great for what people are looking for.
Yeah, one thing that I'm planning on doing is putting like a list of current projects under review that are both city projects, like mobility hub, like Virginia Canyon Road rebuild, things like that, but then also things that are under review by the members of the private property, any of the projects that are here, those sorts of things. So that way, meets all necessary public notice. So that would be cool. Last thing I was gonna mention is about Mountain Park again. It's opening mountain bikes at the end of the month, so we're not sure of a precise date because they're working on putting on final signage. We'll have the first couple of, we've had the uphill trail open for a while, but the first couple of like mountain bike only trails will be opening. And the reason I bring that up is just to say, I think there will be a lot of people coming to town who are excited about it, to try it out. We'll really work hard on messaging around parking, but if we see parking related issues, if you see those issues, bring them our way, because I think it's, because, you know, part of that new parking plan is to try to fix things, but, you know, there are concerns about, like, for example, CRC Park. You know, there's parking there, it's free parking, it's park, but we want the people parking there to be using CRC Park, that's what it's there for.
Do we put a time limit on that? I don't think there is
There
there?
is not currently. I'm trying to remember if the parking plan had an update to that, but it might have been like a 3-hour limit.
Right, which, that's what I was gonna say, I would think we should.
And I think, you know, long term, maybe there's a solution where if we want to have a bigger event in the park, family reunion, picnic, something like that, maybe you could send in a request to get like a day's parking permit or something. I don't know. There's work to be done, but I think we're definitely still working on parking on that east end, because a lot of free parking along Flower Boulevard, at the ballparks, et cetera, but unless people know to work there, they're gonna just try to park in all the neighborhoods, and enforcement will be an issue.
So people are already biking on it, but it's gonna officially be open the end of the
Well,
month?
Officially, it's not open to the public for bikes or any of the downhill trails. Doesn't mean people probably aren't using it, and also like Comba and their folks, like Yeti bikes, Trek bikes, things like that, who work with Comba, have been like doing demos and trials and things to like get it dialed in, but yeah, officially it's open to the public in just a couple of weeks. And that's all I have for now, unless anyone has any other questions.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Okay, the next agenda, item is the conditional use permit. Public meeting for the conditional use permit for the temporary construction of the trailer. Okay, I gotta read this thing, bear with me. This matter is set for a public hearing before the City of Idaho Springs Planning Commission tonight. The city has received a request for a conditional use permit for a temporary construction trailer and parking at 100 East Idaho Springs Road. By Kramer North America. For this application, the Planning Commission will conduct a hearing and vote to either approve or disapprove the application. This is a formal public hearing. We will require testimony to be given under oath. We will not follow any formal rules of evidence. If there is a question about the admissibility of evidence or testimony, I'll make a ruling on that as chair. After I open the hearing, I will invite city staff to give a presentation. Then the applicant will be invited to present evidence and testimony. Then members of the public will be invited to give evidence and testimony. City staff and the applicant may respond to public testimony. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word on any matter raised during the public hearing. Throughout this process, the commissioners may ask questions. After I close the public hearing, the commission will begin its deliberations and make our decision. We will do this by motion. The suggested motion is in the staff report and in our motion guidelines. If we cannot reach a decision tonight, we will also continue the matter. Before I open the public meeting, any questions with us? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing at 6:15 on the conditional use permit for temporary construction trailer and parking at 100 East Idaho Springs Road. Okay, we'll start with staff report.
I will start, and you're fine if I just stay here, I imagine. So I will complete presentation, and we have, Mr. Ken Morris here on behalf of Kramer, who don't know that you have a presentation, but
I do
you're
not.
here for questions and what. So to start this off, as you mentioned, this is a conditional use permit to allow a temporary construction trailer, at 100 East Idaho Springs Road for the duration of the CDOT for the project. Kramer is the contractor that majority of the work, and needs a construction trailer for that purpose, meetings, things like that. The reason we're requiring this conditional use permit, as you probably recall, the same property had to go through a conditional use permit just a couple months ago for the campground use, employee campground for AVA rafting. And during that time, it was established technically the zoning on this property doesn't have any allowed uses, so any use has to get CUP, which is why we're here. The proposed use would be for, the project is proposed to go until approximately 2028. We've established that this approval would basically be granted until such time that the project would end, which is anticipated to be before December 31st, 2028. There's proposal will stated that the trailer is likely to be used by about 3 employees a day. There will also be some parking associated with the use. And of course, there are storage occurring on site, which we'll be formally approving. And so I'll go through the criteria quickly. The proposal does not call for attachment to city water or sewer. As we've discussed about this property before, they're not within 100 feet of sewer, and the water line that's nearby is not sufficient for attachment. Yet this is also a temporary use, so the proposal is that the construction use, they have port body on site for folks using that trailer. Given that it's not used all day long necessarily, given that it's intermittent use, it's temporary use, that means that to be appropriate, as opposed to requiring some sort of permanent water and wastewater solution. Access is through the ball fields park along that public access way. It's anticipated that other than construction parking on site, there's probably only 3 or 5 employees coming and going throughout the day. There's some pretty minor access use through that area.
So the other cars that come in, are employees gonna park there?
Right now, yeah, we do have employees parking there.
And then how do you get them to the job site?
We have like 50 passenger vans that we park at our office just up the road. So we have a person who picks up that van, he goes to the meeting spot.
Sorry,
He hasn't been sworn in.
I know,
I would
sorry.
just
I
wait
apologize.
questions
Yep.
for.
Yep.
No problem.
I actually was asking, so
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem,
Okay.
yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah, some employees park on site, they're shuttled to the job site.
okay,
And
sorry.
then, of course, there will be some intermittent coming and going for the folks who are on site, folks who are coming to meetings. And the proposed trailer will meet all setbacks and height limits. It will connect to electric. Looking at comprehensive plan, staff believes that this is met. The site is identified as mixed use for parks. This would fall under mixed use. Also, construction trailer is necessary as part of the Hill project, the Hill I-70 improvements, also aligned with that comprehensive plan goals. So staff believes that this application would support the comprehensive plan. The final criteria is about impacts to adjacent properties. Staff believes that this is a pretty minor potential impact on adjacent properties. Biggest impact being cars coming and going. There's not an extreme amount of car travel along the corridor, and there's not anticipated to be much noise or odors or anything like that that might cause conflict with adjacent uses. This also further is supported by our referrals, one of which was the rec district. They had no issues with this request. And they're the main user of Ballfields Park besides this general public. Police department and fire authority also had no comments. With that said, staff believes that the conditional use permit criteria are met and would recommend approval. We've put 4 potential proposed conditions on it. First being the approval expiration date of December 31st for completion of project, which are sooner. That there'll be a portable toilet on site for that need. That public access along that north side of the property on that spur trail of the Clear Creek Greenway be maintained, and that in accordance with municipal code requirements, the CUP may be revoked by city council. So yes, the recommended motion would be motion to approve the proposed conditional use permit with the conditions as contained in staff report, something to that effect. And I will stop there and answer any questions.
One question, does this overlap ADA
Oh, sure.
property
So,
for next year? let's say?
well, so it's the same property, but this property is large enough where this one is right on the very eastern boundary of the property on the lowest bench. The AVA rafting camping use is on the far western uphill side, and so there's a buffer of several hundred feet between the uses already. And theoretically, I guess the storage use could expand, but the lease agreements that Kramer has and that AVA has have pretty defined areas where they can.
Did the ADA do it this year?
Yes.
They did?
and that's obviously outside of this application, but we haven't received any complaints.
I have looked up there, I didn't see it.
I have a question. You mentioned here that it says this area already used as parking and storage for Kramer as they work on Foothill. They seeking to formalize. So are they having to go through this process because of the trailer, or they should have done this before parking and storage? I'm just
Well,
wondering, so I have.
yes, strictly speaking, we've never granted as a city, as far as I can tell, formal approval of the storage or parking on site. Obviously, we also never gave, say, a violation or anything to that effect. So given that the CUP came in because of the construction trailer, I felt it prudent to wrap all of it into it, just to make sure that going forward for the next few years, there aren't any issues and questions that.
So they, assuming they are done in 2028, if they wanted to, if the owner wanted to continue to allow someone else to park there, they will have to get permit.
Right, or, ideally, they would go through the process to rezone the property so that any long-term use that's allowed in that zoning district would just come in and establish that use and not have to go through the CUP each time. I think that would be our long-term goal. And we had put in place for the other conditional use permit on this property that if they wanted to make that a long-term use, they would need to go through that process. Theoretically, I guess, we could move another CUP for it, but we had mentioned that that would be the preference.
Okay, applicant presents, may as well come up and say something, I'm going to swear you in. Then I can ask my question again.
Okay, can you please state your name for the record, please?
My name is Ken Morrison.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to give just a brief description for it?
Yeah, so basically everything that we discussed is primarily, we're probably only gonna have one or two people in the trailer. Right now, it's operations guy that helps us with our mechanics and stuff on site. So he's there for 9 hours during the day, and then he's out of the trailer. We have bathroom facilities, like you said, and mostly using it just as parking for people to kind of gather and then take out to work, so.
And then my question was, so you get the employees, they park there in the morning, pick up vehicles at the end of the day, and then you transport them back and forth.
That's correct. We have two vans that we park at our other site. Pick those vans up in the morning, pick all our employees up after they park, take them to work, and then we bring them back at the end of the shift.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment, do we have anybody signed up? Anybody online?
Nobody online.
Okay, so now we'll go back to commissioner, staff, or applicant. Any questions?
I'm curious about, like, we're talking about this property having, one side is ADA, one side is this one. To 2028 is calling it temporary. It's a little, I think, of a stretch. Obviously, it is temporary, it's not permanent. And sounds like ABA is probably gonna try to come back next year again. And other application, we also talked about water and wastewater. I'm curious, like, if the property owner is gonna continue to do this kind of temporary things on a regular basis, is it in our, or, well, would it be better to suggest that he, I don't know, figures out the access to water and water, like, so that's not, so we don't have to, I don't know, like, ignore it or approve it every temporary stuff that comes, with it. Is that a thing? Is that something that we could change later on? Or, like, for example, well, these guys have the permit or 2028, if we halfway through it, we're like, you know what, we think it's better that you actually have water in this water. Is that a thing? Or once we approve it like this, then we have to keep it like that?
We're approving it based on the proposal that involves portable toilets, for wastewater, for example, and that approval is valid for the duration of that CUP. I think for any future uses or for this one, we certainly could determine that what's proposed is insufficient for use on site. And the code basically says there needs to be, if you're within 100 feet of the line, wastewater line, water line, shall connect unless there's an extenuated reason why not to. So in the case of water line, it's a 2-inch line, but it's pretty old. So Paul from Crane from Public Works has said functionally it's probably like a 1-inch, 1.5-inch line. Likely serves about the capacity that it can for the ball fields and for the Forest Service. And so for the camping use, for example, we thought it was sufficient to have like the on-site water tank as an alternative. For sewer, it's not within 100 feet. In order to run line to the site, it would be quite costly. It's not necessarily possible, but in the absence of the ability to connect to a sewer line in the area, you have to propose a different method of compliance that, say, septic system, if you're doing a permanent use, something like that, a leach field, if you can't meet that requirement in different ways. So I guess the question becomes, is this use for any other future use would portable toilets be sufficient? Or are we doing something more permanent, say, is required? I think if anyone was proposing a permanent use on site, they said, I'm building a hotel. Certainly, if maybe we'd require them to build a net action connection, maybe we'd allow a septic and leach field, something like that. But Yeah, that's it's a long way of saying that once, if it was approved with a portable toilet, where we can't really go back on that for the duration of the approval. We could obviously make the approval shorter.
That's just a thought that I had, you know, I think it's good to have like the flexibility of that property, you know, for whatever comes up and you can use it. But at the same time, I just think that if that's gonna be a constant thing, why just not request, which obviously not just request, like it's gonna be $10, obviously, but just that thought, it's really good.
It's something that may change once they start developing the multiples too.
Yeah.
Because then the property owner may have a better opportunity.
Yeah, would that be a thing that we can request of them? Like, hey, since they're gonna be redoing these lines, you need to
I think it's up to them.
get in there. Well, yeah.
I do think if
Legally, right?
it's a long-term,
I think we're getting a little bit off, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just sharing, so it's a thought that might come out of later.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I will now close the public hearing at 6:32 on the minor subdivision request.
No.
Oh, sorry, forgive me the wrong script. I'll now close the hearing on the conditional use permit for the temporary construction trailer and parking at 100 East Idaho Springs Road. Any other deliberations from the council? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Recommend approval of the proposed conditional use permit with the following conditions. Number one, approval will expire upon the sooner of notice from permit that the permit is no longer needed for December 31st, 2028. Two, that provided portable toilets shall be serviced regularly and provide adequate sanitation for users of the site, as determined by the city. City personnel may access the site at all reasonable times to evaluate compliance with this condition. Public access across the north side of the property along the existing road path shall be maintained and not blocked. City council may revoke this at any time in accordance with ISMC.
Okay. Second. Any comments, questions? Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Yes?
Caitlin Maxwell. Vice Chair Ursula Kuzuma.
Yes.
Chair Cindy Olsen.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You're passed. Okay, so the next agenda item is a request for recommendation of the ordinance, section 2115 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to eliminate occupancy limits based on the familial relationships as required by new state statute HB 24-001007. So this is just getting compliant, right?
yeah, essentially, our current definition of family says that any number of not more than 5 persons living together in a dwelling unit unless they're related by blood, adoption, or marriage. So essentially, it limits unrelated groups of people from occupying the space. State passed a law saying that you cannot do that, but still would allow us to regulate based on health and safety standards, like various other places in our code, chapter 12, chapter 18, chapter 19, building and fire codes, water and wastewater, etc. So yeah, really the change is to eliminate that 5-person limit and instead just say that it's any group of people up to the number that, for those kind of health and safety standards.
So what it's saying is families could have 20 people, they're all blood related, that's fine. But a house can only have up to 5.
Well, that's what our current code says, that the state has said that's not, can't do that. The state said you can only regulate the number of unrelated people in a dwelling unit based on these other factors, so
Right.
theoretically, if you had a 10-bedroom home, you couldn't say you're only allowed 5 people, you could say, well, each bedroom's allowed X number of people based on building code, fire code, whatever. Same with like a studio, so we can still regulate if it's like a really small space, 5 unrelated roommates probably wouldn't be able to fit, but the way the code read now, like you could have a huge home that still only allows 5 people. So yeah, really, we're required to do this per state statute, and this is just, achieving compliance.
Okay, do we have a motion? Pass this ordinance.
I have a question actually. Now we're discussing.
You can ask it now.
So I asked my question is, where does housekeeping unit definition comes from? Because I asked a couple of people about what the definition of housekeeping unit is for them, and I heard like a million different thoughts. So I was thinking that unless, like I'm just very ignorant and I haven't heard this, and this is like a very used term, maybe we should add a definition of housekeeping unit.
I think of it as a house.
Yeah, I don't see it in our code
It's a house
defines.
in one place.
I did not
Everyone has a
actually
space.
draft this ordinance. I'm thinking maybe it is defined in the act itself, the House bill.
Yeah, because, housekeeping units in a dwelling unit is an interesting way of saying it, because we could also just say, unless there's something in that, you could easily just say, well,
Well, we do use the term later on in the code. There we go. That's why.
Just answer.
Let's see. Yeah, we don't use it.
And I mean, we can create our own definition, right? I just like,
It's not in the act.
I think use the verbiage that's in the act.
Well,
I think maybe, when I think of housekeeping unit, and this is me kind of just basing it on no specific act. I think of like people living together and sharing facilities within a unit, and theoretically, like, could have a dwelling unit for our definition because it's only one kitchen or something, but it's separated in such a way that maybe there's 3 people over here using this portion of the home that don't interact at all with people in this other portion because of the partition or something to that effect. But
yeah, we don't really use the term. So, I mean,
Well, we can move forward with passing it. It goes to council with coming up with the verbiage as used as in that the state's using.
right, or make a recommendation to define what housekeeping
I
unit is,
would
one or
prefer
the
that
other.
To me, if you follow what the state's doing, instead of creating another definition, it's not up for translation. If someone in the community comes in and then Wonder has to explain it, or Dylan has to explain it, or 10 years from now, Dylan's not here, who's gonna explain it the same way?
well, there's
I
a
just look
definition
at
in
it,
document
it's
though.
I,
It will be a definition that is somewhere in the municipal code.
Right, but what I'm saying, if you just follow what the way the state's saying it,
Well, and
yeah, the state doesn't use that term either. That's
Right.
not used in.
right, so that's what I mean, so
So,
use the terminology that's being used by the state.
state's just using single dwelling, I guess, in the
That makes sense.
in the act.
Now, that,
Even
with that said,
though-
there may be a valid reason why Carmen chose to include this definition that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I think it's a good term, right? And it's,
I think it's terrible. It doesn't, I mean, because we all interpreted it differently.
And-
And that's what she said. She's had people ask her and they've interpreted it differently.
I asked a different people, like, what do you think about this? You know where the housekeeper lives. Like,
Oh, see, I think of it as one unit that you keep clean, but I think what they're trying to cover is if you add an attachment to it, is that now part of that dwelling? Well, if it's part of it because you're maintaining it all the same, then yes, it would be. But maybe you have a different renter in it, but it's still attached, maybe we have a door between, I don't know. It's so different with many
well, it would
ways.
just be whatever a dwelling unit is in that case. You know, if you added an ADU, a different dwelling unit.
what about household?
No household would have apartment in the house.
But I think you're referring to a group of people living together, right?
Mhm.
I think housekeeping unit is almost like the gender neutral, like, way, like, not gender neutral, but like, you know what I'm saying, like, it's like the neutral way of saying, like, family living together, a group of people.
And
It's
that's
trying to
fine.
be that catch-all term. I mean, it's a good issue to flag. I don't know if it needs to necessarily be a part of the motion recommending approval. I think this could also just be something that we mentioned to Andy and Carmen, you know, the mayor. It's up to you guys.
And when it goes to council, it can be tweaked at that time,
Yeah, I mean,
instead of holding it up.
I don't think you necessarily have to add to the motion on the condition that this housekeeping unit definition gets added. I think you could just have that be something that we talk to the
Okay,
staff.
so we asked you guys to refer to that as like, we thought it would be clear, whatever, okay.
Yeah, just in an effort to not complicate making the motion, we could still go tomorrow and say, hey, this passed, but this issue came up and we wanted to.
Just reading, I pulled up housekeeping unit on a web search. Lawinsider.com says a single housekeeping unit means that all occupants of the dwelling unit enjoy a common right to use the entire dwelling regardless of non-contractual arrangements among occupants or with the property owner because certain areas of the dwelling unit has individual sleeping spaces. It's kind of confusing, but it seems that it.
More information.
Yeah. So anyway, it seems that there is a distinction between the housekeeping unit and the dwelling unit or like legal text, but I certainly don't have the expertise to say that, so I think what.
Complicated and more.
Yeah, what I'm seeing online is like a real estate lawyer said that it's used to include such situations as a gay or lesbian couple living together or a house being rented in college town where students are. So I do just think it's trying to be like
All inclusive.
neutral and all inclusive of all types of living situations.
Maybe it should just say living together in an all inclusive dwelling.
Yeah, I wish I had more for you on this, but I did not see this ordinance until it made the packet.
Yeah, I didn't make this.
Okay, so do we have a motion for ordinance number?
Make a motion to recommend approval of an ordinance amending section 2115 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code, ISMC, to eliminate occupancy limits based on familiar relationships as required by new state law, HB 24-1007.
Second. Second. Roll call?
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Caitlin Maxwell. Yes. Vice Chair Ursula Kuzma. Chair Cindy Olsen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Okay. Next item is the public hearing for the minor subdivision of Kevin's property at 3303 Highway 103 to create 5 lots. Okay, this matter is set for a public hearing before the City of Idaho Springs Planning Commission tonight. The city has received a request for a minor subdivision to create 5 lots at 3303 Highway 103 for the property known as the Cabins property or Blackstone Rivers Ranch Cabins. For this application, the Planning Commission will conduct a hearing and vote to either approve or disapprove the application. This is a formal public hearing. We will require testimony to be given under oath. We will not follow any formal rules of evidence. If there is a question about the admissibility of the evidence or testimony, I'll make a ruling on that as chair. After I open the hearing, I will invite city staff to give presentation. Then the applicant will be invited to present evidence and testimony. The members of the public will be invited to give evidence and testimony. City staff and the applicant may respond to public testimony. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word on any matter raised during the public hearing. Throughout this process, commissioners may ask questions. After I close the public hearing, the commission will begin its deliberations and make our decision. We will do this by motion. A suggested motion is in the staff report and in our motions guidelines. If you cannot reach a decision tonight, we will continue this matter. Before I open the public hearing, any questions about the process? Okay, now open the public hearing at 6:47 p.m. on the minor subdivision request to create 5 lots at 3303 Highway 103, known as the Cabins property or Blackstone Rivers Ranch Cabins. We'll start with staff report.
Okay, hello. I will give another brief presentation on this property application request. As mentioned, the request is for minor subdivision to create 5 lots, where now they're one. The zoning on the site is C3, which is commercial interchange development. This is not proposed to change. The existing uses on the site are commercial lodging cabins. There's 11 existing cabins. They're used for rented on overnight basis to guests, to folks using the ranch, various ways. Those uses are not proposed to change at this time. All uses on the proposed sites, unless rezoned or otherwise approved, would have to remain commercial. Let's see. So there's a plat proposed in the attachments, attachment 1 and 2. Give a little bit of background. This property was annexed back in 2020 and zoned C3 also in 2020. The purpose of this subdivision is to create 5 parcels that will ultimately allow additional flexibility for the business. And I'll let the applicants who are here talk a little bit more about any proposals for the site. With that, I will go into the criteria. There are 5 criteria: conformance with any approved preliminary plat, conditions, conformance with subdivision regulations, conformance with applicable requirements from the zoning district in which the property described is located, general compliance with comprehensive plan, compliance with city's regulations for any areas or activities of state interest. The first criteria about a preliminary plat is not relevant because the minor subdivision does not require preliminary platting. Minor subdivisions, just for note, are only if you're creating 5 lots or fewer. If you're creating more than 5 lots, you have to go through a full preliminary plat, final plat process. So that one is that it's not applicable. In conformance with applicable requirements of subdivision regulations, we believe that to be suitably met. The plat contents meet the requirements listed in chapter 24 of the municipal code. It meets the requirements for a minor subdivision in that it creates no more than 5 lots and does not require any additional public improvements. All lots have frontage on a street of standards as required in the municipal codes, which It's currently accessed via private driveway, which connects to Highway 103. Neither the fire authority nor city engineer had issues with access. Currently, adequate water and wastewater facilities are available for the cabins, and they all have a means of providing those requirements, or meeting those requirements. So staff believes that subdivision regulations are met. Zoning district, I would note that again, that it's C3, commercial interchange district. There's no minimum lot size. They range in size from 0.65 acres to 3.32 acres. All existing improvements meet setbacks for C3. They all meet required open space. They all meet height requirements. So creating new lots won't cause any of the structures on site to become non-conforming. No uses are proposed to change. Existing uses conform with the zoning on site. All of the existing lots continue to be in conformance with zoning. With respect to comprehensive plan, this property is transitional mixed use. That would allow for a variety of uses, including residential and commercial uses. Potentially, these are commercial using, lodging would be appropriate. We also speak specifically in the comprehensive plan about Chicago Creek area as desirable to have tourism-oriented hospitality uses, which this provides. And we certainly continue to need lodging resources within the area. That seems to be a goal to have more lodging. And it needs a few things within the code supporting tourism, incentivizing economic development and local business. The owners are local residents, local business owners. Establishing a pattern of land use that protects existing character, compatibility with developments, and efficient use of land. This is a C3 zone property. In the future, with newly created lots, theoretically, these could be redeveloped in other commercial ways. We would have to review any redevelopment, however, to ensure that character, compatibility, and use of land is appropriate, so staff believes that's met. Finally, speaking about areas or activities of state interest, purposes to regulate projects that would cause excessive noise, water, air pollution, promote efficient use of public resources, protect the health, welfare, and safety and the environment. Staff believes this is all met. The existing use doesn't appear to cause major noise, water, air pollution, or degrade environmental quality. I would say that these areas and activities of state interest are more for highway projects, dams. Given all the above and the fact that we didn't get any referrals against the proposal and we didn't receive any public comments, staff is in support. The role tonight would be to recommend either approval or denial. Staff recommends approval. We didn't have any conditions to recommend. And I did include a recommended motion in the staff report in favor. Should you wish to use it. That's it from me.
Thank you. Any questions for Dylan, or will let the applicant go? Okay. Yeah.
Hello. Hi. Can you please state your name for the record, please? And raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
One thing I wanted to correct really quick is that there's a reference, I don't know if it's a title or a legal reference to Blackstone Rivers Ranch cabins. We do also own Blackstone Rivers Ranch, but they're completely separate properties and ownership entities. So I just want to make sure that legally it's not considered part of Blackstone.
Right, yeah, that was just me
No worries. But yes, we do refer a ton of our couples from Blackstone to Cabins. We know that the other wedding venue that's up the hill from us sends a bunch of Cabins to us. But we are seeking this subdivision for a few reasons. Some estate planning on our end, and some liability reasons. We've had a couple of incidents from time to time with guests not acting inappropriately. And so we're seeking to kind of separate some of the liability between the various properties. Additionally, we are struggling finding good coverage for flood and fire insurance in our area. And it's becoming even more challenging for the commercial side. So the property is split anyways with a lot of different policies and different carriers to get the coverage we need. And so that's kind of how it all came about. But ideally, just the flexibility for us and for us to planning. So we don't intend to do anything different with the property as far as current use. We rent them nightly, and sometimes we pay it. Just depends on the guest. If we're going to do any improvements to the property, we would be maybe adding hot tubs in the future for specific cabins, and then ideally we would love to build a handful more down the road. Financially, it's not going to be possible for us yet, but we're hoping in 2 to 4 years we can do that. And forward with that. But no gatherings, no weddings, no additional uses. I know there was a question on taxes, commercial taxes, I think. We pay we collect 12.55% taxes for all stays. 5% goes to the city of Idaho Springs. 2% goes to the county lodging district tax. 2.9 goes to Colorado state sales tax. And 2.65 goes to Colorado Bear Creek County sales tax, which is required for our commercial license. Can you get that? I guess if you raise it for implementing.
No, it's a county tax that it went to the voters is how that works. So it goes to the county for tourism and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway. That's a different story. Okay, is that it? Any questions for Rachel? Gosh, I think you guys answered them all. How long did you do this? Okay. You can ask Dylan because then if Rachel needs to help, she can answer. Yep.
So here says existing uses on site including, oh, sorry, not that. Wrong page. The cabins will all need to eventually connect to city water and sewer in accordance to section blah, blah, blah. But this chapter is not a part of the minor subdivision review criteria and might be addressed separately in the future. So my question is, you say here first that the cabins will need to eventually connect to city water, and then you said that it might be addressed. So you're referring like it might be addressed because right now we're not talking about it, or I mean, what is the timeline for them to connect? I'm just curious about that.
This is a subdivision, not.
We are actually talking about it. It's been a separate issue with the city because we have an issue where the city installed their sewer line on our property instead of off our property. So we've been working for years now to get that worked out, and we're almost there. Okay, and I think that's why they wanted to keep that issue separate from this application.
That makes sense.
And also, like, the review criteria doesn't, kind of was like Does the review criteria, the subdivision regulations speak to things like connection to water sewer, went back and forth with Carmen. Decided, no, it's like something that we're addressing through this other process, but like, let's keep it out of it, but just because some of them are not on water and sewer at the moment, briefly mention it, and by briefly mentioning it, it probably made things more confusing
No, it's good,
than it needs to be.
and it's actually in process.
Thank you for information. It's mainly for me is knowledge, so I can, refer to this knowledge in the future. That's all I got.
Oh, you have so many marks on the paper.
I read my papers.
She's got all these lines. The only one question. You mark them as you go along. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to public comment.
I don't have anything online, and it doesn't appear that anyone is here.
Okay, and then commissioner, staff, applicant, any other questions? It seems a lot simpler than all the paperwork we got.
Oh,
That's because you guys did such an efficient job on getting it together and presenting it.
well, nothing, not comprehensive.
That's good. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing at 7:02 on the minor subdivision request. And now commissioners, begin your deliberations. Okay, I guess my comment, I should have said that after, is it seems a lot more complicated. With subdividing it, I think we understand the zoning of it is C3. So it kind of limits what there is to do there. But if something changes, they'd have to come back for rezoning, right?
Yeah, for example.
If it was to become residential or something like that.
Yeah, let's say the long term, they were like, let's abandon the commercial side, we just want to sell them all as residential properties.
They'd have to be rezoned first.
Or like a
Or build
conditional use
more.
permit or something. Yeah, or it could be multifamily would be permitted, so for example, the lot that has the multi-unit lot, having a 5-unit structure on it, that could theoretically be pretty easily have like change of use to residential, but ones that wouldn't be like multi-family, like if you wanted single family, that wouldn't be permitted yet.
I have to say, when you look at the pictures, it's beautifully done. Guys have put so much work into it.
It's been a lot.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for a minor subdivision to subdivide the existing property to create 5 lots at 3303 Highway 103, Zone C3.
Hey, second? Second. Okay, roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Caitlin Maxwell. Yes. Vice Chair Ursula Kuzma.
Yes.
Chair Cindy Olsen.
Yes.
Thank
Okay, you guys don't have to stay, because our next one is,
You wanna know what's going on?
And it's super fun. We want to.
well, we're getting close on this next one.
I don't know why I'm too.
Really? No, because you look at the marks in your paperwork.
I like them.
And they're all different colors.
One is question, one is fact, and I don't remember.
Okay. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next item is the extended stay hotel and motel code language. Gosh, we're so close on this. Dylan, do you want to present?
Sure, yeah,
Where we're at?
so just scope is, Nick and our legal team has prepared a draft ordinance for extended stay hotel and motel licensing and the operational requirements as we had discussed last meeting back in June. This is a draft of what the takeaways from that meeting. So of course, if we're ready to recommend approval, then we can refer this on to city council. If we need to make any changes, we can certainly do that. If we need to have another meeting, that also works. We're not required to approve or deny anything tonight. Just where we got to last meeting quick, was we had talked about, setting up those operational requirements, minimum standards, licensing program, enforcement. We also briefly touched on some other types of like shared amenity style housing, but ultimately decided to shelve that for now, move forward with the extended stay hotels and motels specifically. And so that's where this language comes from. We propose a new definition for an extended stay lodging, renting of a room unit or other portion of a hotel or motel for a duration of stay greater than 29 consecutive days. We also propose license definition for that section. Some of the big things that would be required as part of this, if approved as is that they would have to file a completed application form with the city clerk's office. And that's something that Wonder has already started working on, researching other communities, things like that. So that way, we don't have that right at this time point yet, but we want to have it before anything was approved via ordinance with council. So that way, when we meet, when it's time to go live, we're ready. It would require business name and address, a floor plan of establishment, specific rooms, units, or areas for extended stay, floor plans of each room, a floor plan of all amenities. We recommend this to be renewed annually, and also it recommends that any extended stay lodging would have to get filed by January 1st of 2024. We've also recommended certain minimum standards that were discussed previously, including designation of the extended stay areas on a building floor plan, a display of those stating the license information on those rooms, requirement that guest personal possessions not be stored on exterior balconies, interior corridors, or a matter that prohibits movement and ingress and egress. And then certain amenities, including 24-hour desk staffing, wireless internet, in-room or common laundry facilities, some sort of secure storage, and then cooking facilities, either in individual rooms or as a common area. So those are kind of the key things that were discussed previously that are included here. And so I guess there's two requests potentially. A, what changes are, requests for direction on any changes we'd like to see. If there's anything that doesn't seem to sufficiently address the goals that we've talked about previously, and then finally, whether I guess we're ready to move this along. And we included the ordinance in the packet, of course, so you've been able to review that, but again, Nick and I think will hopefully be able to answer any questions.
And I'll just throw in, it's shorter than what we looked at the last couple of meetings, but that's only because I just took some of there was some language that was kind of saying the same thing, so I just consolidated it. But hopefully none of this is too new or you think needs to be changed, because I really do think it reflects what we've already talked about in a couple of meetings. And the only thing that was added that we didn't receive direction on is this subsection G, talking about suspension and revocations of a license. This procedure that's provided here is the same procedure that short-term rental licenses have. So in drafting this, I thought it made sense to have the short-term rental kind of procedure match that of the extended stay. And you will see that the very last section, G1D, states that an appeal of the administrator's decision would go to the planning commission, not the council. The planning commission's the final say on the matter, subject to judicial review, but that is the same procedure that the short-term rental side as well.
Wonder, are you good with that?
I don't know if we've had STR license revocation appeals, have we?
No, I always think it's good to mention it and connect it to each type, so just, it's clearer that way. But
Okay, so the date. Existing hotels shall have until January 1st, 2025. That's just coming up,
Yeah, and
which. That's good. That might be a tough one with, well, maybe not, because. The property I'm thinking of, the stove could be an issue because you might have to redo some electrical or something to be able to accommodate a full-size stove. Just knowing the property, that's my thought.
And it does have for the implementation schedules like F, clause F, it says that you have until January 1st to file the application and until March 1st to obtain the license. So I guess that would potentially give a little bit of a buffer to say like, well, they filed the license in December. So, oh, well, they've got to get a stove. That would hopefully give time for, pull a building permit for the electrical work, that sort of thing. But the other thing to note on date is say that we're not ready to recommend approval, or it goes to council and it takes longer at council. You know, if it's getting really close to that January 1st date, I don't know if that would be a reasonable, you know, if we didn't approve this until say December 2nd, ultimately, then we might have to alter that, but.
So my other question on that, which would be to Nick, so you have a pre-existing property. They might not be able to meet this by January 1st, but they're under contract with businesses to provide this extended stay, lodging, housing, whatever we're gonna call it. Where does that leave them? Because maybe they can't do this by January 1st, they're gonna have people living there and stuff.
We'll get it done by March.
So I have a couple thoughts on that. I'll answer your question first. That would be like a government impairment of pre-existing contract, which is not permitted, so those contracts would be honored.
Okay.
The other thing, just looking at this, it really is a March 1st effective date, right? I mean, we say get your application in by January 1st, but there's no enforcement mechanism. You know, if someone gets an application in February 1st, we have nothing to punish them with. So it's really just, I think the January 1st deadline is just trying to give Wonder a little out period here and help her out. It's really March 1st. And if someone got their application in February 15th, let's say, I think that would look like Wonder saying, we have your application, cease offering extended stay lodging from March 1st until your application is approved. Maybe your office gets through the application by March 1st, maybe not, but.
Cease what?
What was that?
Cease what?
Cease the operation of the extended stay lodging, right?
You can't do that. You can't make people get up and move out.
Well, we can't. But we can tell the business that it's unlawful under the code.
We'll have every employer ready to slit your throat, yeah.
Well, it's a policy decision. I mean, I don't.
When you mentioned the
But
government-
I guess, but if it's a pre-existing contract, then no, you can't, so. I'm just making sure we're not,
Yes, outside of that
Disrupting.
scope.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
If, and I, all right, if I ask a question, So let's say that someone who's operating existing has someone, that they've signed, I don't know if this is the case anymore, they've signed like a 12-month lease for room 6 at one of the hotels, let's say, I don't know. Like in that, would it be the same thing? That's a pre-existing contract. They wouldn't be able to renew that contract, but until the end of that 12-month lease.
Yes.
Even if that lease was technically against code as it was written when they entered that lease, because, you know, right now, any hotel room lodging that's approved as lodging cannot rent for more than 29 days. Like anything would be in violation of a code. Whether we have chosen to enforce that, you know, is up for debate, of course, but technically speaking, if we had chosen to enforce on any of these, if we had proof that anything was happening, et cetera, like they've been legally operating.
It's like, oh no.
We're getting very deep in the weeds here,
I know.
but in that situation, if we enforced under the zoning code that existed for 20 years before that contract was in place and not under this ordinance, then it wouldn't be.
Okay, the next question then is, speaking of properties and they can't meet these requirements by that date, they can appeal for a variance. They can go to the variance board and say, hey, can we extend this because we can't do the rewiring that we want to do in the kitchen area until this extended stay contract is done. So we won't be able to do it and start until June 1st. So we could grant them a variance that says, okay, then they have to start the work by then and complete it by their next extended stay time that they're gonna do something.
Theoretically, though, they probably also need to get a conditional use permit to officially allow a use that's not allowed per code. So I would say, well, I'm not gonna grant you a variance from one section of code to allow an illegal use. So that would be my one caveat is we could grant a variance if they can show hardship and show that this is the minimum necessary variance to allow for reasonable use, because those are the variance criteria. And if you could show those, then theoretically we could approve the variance, but it would be hard to say that an extended stay lodging is the minimum necessary for reasonable use. And I think we'd probably argue, well, this use isn't permitted.
Yeah, I agree with Dylan. I don't think you could give a variance for someone to violate what's
Well,
unlawful.
what I'm saying is they're just getting a variance to extend it for 3 more months because maybe they can't hire an electrician to come in and put whatever they need done in a timely manner, because I mean, we all know how that works right now. You're lucky if you can find someone to mow your lawn.
I think that if, just from like a enforcement level, if someone is making a true effort to comply with this code, I don't also think that if they said, hey, I just need 3 months for XYZ to be complete, here's all the paperwork showing it to be complete. We're not gonna be citing them in this report, right? I mean, it's not like it's just not kind of how
It's just, I can see that
enforcement goes.
as a question being brought up, if somebody can't meet what these are. I think it looks great. Gosh, we've been working on it for 3 years.
I'm a little troubled about the fact that these organizations are making contracts for something that is not lawful. So is there a way to, I mean, this is way too much, but I mean, that probably won't happen, but I worry that they're gonna be like, oh, we have a contract for 20 years. So sorry, but no, they couldn't do that because that's not lawful, right?
I don't know the maximum length of like a lease for.
But I mean, how can, so what I'm trying to go, I guess, is like, how can we make sure that these contracts, they are either signed or gonna be signed to be used those hotel rooms for long term, which is not legal. How can we make sure that that's it, that's the end of it, like they either get this license or they cannot continue to do it? You know, like,
Bypassing this ordinance.
Like, yeah, and
But I
then code
suppose-
enforcement.
But what
that's
if
a good
this-
question is if you establish the 20-year lead, like if they hear, you know, if this hotel's like, well, okay, we don't wanna put in a stove. So let's just sign a lease for a period of 20 years because of the government infringement on, well, contract.
You can't like do it to circumvent what's coming, right?
Well,
But if it's
That's what I'm
a
saying, like,
contract,
you can't,
I guess if a contract is signed once, like at a certain point, we could cite pending ordinance, right?
Yes.
But I don't know at what point that is, like, could we set pending ordinance now since the ordinance is under consideration tonight?
yes, I think so, and you couldn't just see something as coming down from the government and just enter into a contract to get out of it. That's not what that the legal doctrine is for. It's for actual contracts that were entered into with an expectation that the law was X, and now it's changed to Y. It's the same as like, it's not exactly the same, but it's like a building approval, like your approval is what the international codes were at the time you got approved, not what they are, whatever you do.
yeah, that's
It's
why
that
I'm
kind of-
worried.
Okay, another question, what about the properties that are out there that are hotels or look like hotels, they're labeled hotel motels, and they're doing year-round like apartments in them? I'm thinking of, where do they fall in this?
It would be, if they are a hotel or motel as defined by the zoning code, then they are subject to this because extended stay lodging means the renting of a room, unit, or other portion of a hotel or motel.
But our business license doesn't say they're a hotel motel, they just get a business license, so how do you know what they're doing?
It'd be whatever their zoning classification. But
Yeah, I would say like, let's say I had a hotel, I operate, and it's built as a hotel. And now, and I've changed the use, not through an official change of use, but now every single unit is like an apartment unit. Do those meet the definition of dwelling unit? Like, would each of those units have a kitchen, bathroom, sink, you know, all those things to meet the
No.
definition of dwelling unit? Because if they don't, then you can't argue that you're a resident. You're not a residential apartment complex because none of them are apartment units. They're probably approved to like a commercial building code potentially because it's a commercial structure, it's not residential. So I could see an example where you said, I don't want to be, I'm not a hotel, I'm an apartment complex. We'd say,
You have to meet the criteria of
like,
a
we can
dwelling
approve
unit.
you for that, but if you're apartment units, you'll have to create official units and they have to meet those apartment
Wow.
standards, I would say. So an easier process likely would be to license them for as extended stay hotels, because
But,
Yeah,
okay,
change.
so going back to the extended stay hotels, maybe we should cap a limit on how long they could be.
like how long stay limit
Extended
could be.
stay can be, yeah, because you could turn around and do exactly what you just said. You're gonna get the extended stay, you're gonna meet this criteria, well, they either have to have a communal area or a kitchen in each one, but they can sit there and say, well, you can live here for 5 years, extended stay. And which in theory is back to being an apartment or dwelling unit, but they are not meeting. Well, they'd have to build the communal kitchen, or each unit would have to have a cooking area
Right.
and meet the codes of all that. I don't know, these are just questions,
Yeah, I guess if you were going through the trouble of putting a kitchen unit in each hotel room, at that point,
Your
maybe
apartments.
you would want to pursue like a change of use to be residential apartments, and suppose they could do it that way, but I don't know, like bringing it up to building code might be harder with changing the use to residential apartments versus this extended stay. It's a hotel. I would, I imagine it's for folks who are like, we're doing a combination, or even if you rent them all out longer term, it certainly isn't easier to get into compliance just by doing one, kitchen, because it's a lot less work, but that's, like, would we have an issue if someone changed their hotel to a residential use, I guess? And that-
No, I don't think so, if they could meet the guidelines and stuff, but right now, do we have properties that are doing it the way we're discussing? Yes, we do. And where do they fit into this now? Because they're not this, and this could be a huge deal,
Because
to be honest.
built as a hotel, they were built with the intent of being for overnight lodging.
Which one?
Like anything that,
Oh.
any hotel, if you're a hotel, even if now it's not being used as such, it's built to that standard, and I don't think we've ever approved a hotel being officially changed to an apartment complex that I know of. But it would be allowed for a commercial zone. Multi-family.
I think what you're speaking to kind of just happens organically. I mean, another one of our clients, they have a more stringent hotel licensing system, but they have an extended stay portion to that. And one of the hotels in that city is currently being transitioned into an apartment complex because they couldn't reach compliance under the ordinance.
Okay,
And I think that would just, I think the ordinance kind of forces your hand. And you don't want to come out of compliance with the ordinance, because if you operate as an extended stay without this license, you're in a lot of trouble. But I think that forces the hand to make that transition without us kind of knowing each property.
I know the city of Wheat Ridge had a big issue with it, and a lot of people lost their housing because of the extended stay.
Yeah, that's a policy.
Because they
decision,
couldn't
you know?
meet the criteria, which isn't a bad thing, because they weren't good living conditions, so, yeah. Okay, those are just some of mine, that's why I thought if we put like they only can do it for 6 months or something, but that doesn't sound like it's necessary. Because like you said, the ordinance will take care of itself as to if they get to keep that use or not, or have to come up with these accommodations and better the place or change it.
And if you are trying to limit stays to a certain length, and that's another policy decision that has to be made, because obviously this ordinance contemplates if you have this set of amenities, someone could stay there for as long as they want, as long as these criteria are being satisfied.
I think that was the reason why we wanted to do this in the first place, but people also already living there. Long term, I think we wanted to try to save it.
Well, no, the properties. But anyway, okay, any other questions? Is everybody ready to move forward with
I have a question.
approving this for council?
I think this looks great. Thank you so much for staying a long time. I do believe I found a typo.
Sure.
On the cooking facilities must be available on the premises, you list microwave And that's kind of how this whole thing started. We had decided that having a microwave for a long stay, it wasn't adequate.
Or we don't, no, we,
I had in my
Yeah,
notes
that's
add microwave. in my-
yes, we always have said.
I remember this conversation, part of the whole, how this whole thing started, is because we were talking about how people are living there for long term, and we considered that cooking in a microwave wasn't a thing for long term.
Yeah, that was a conversation a couple of years ago, but I think we kind of bypassed it. I think I made it pretty clear that, I think a microwave is fine in a unit, and, well, this is in the shared amenities. A minimum, the kitchen facilities shall include a minimum.
Yeah, but
So the shared
Microwave doesn't
amenities, if they're gonna have, individual rooms, then they have to meet building codes, which means they have to have 2 sinks, everything
well, and
like
they
that.
can, exactly, and they can decide, like he was saying also, like, they can decide what the best option is. So,
Yeah.
you know, they can have like a, kitchen, so they don't have to put a stove top on every room. But that was
Right.
our conversation, the microwave is not a adequate cooking option. We might need to go back and look at minutes.
We can remove it. I just know that in drafting this, I had in my notes, like, the word microwave arrowed into this section as it was existing, like, indicating that it should be added.
Yeah, I think
So-
it's silly if you go into a communal kitchen, what's wrong with there being a microwave?
No, a microwave is good, but it can
It could be
it can
just
substitute,
Yeah.
It would be just a microwave,
and that's
would
not.
be
what we-
adequate.
Yeah, is one microwave sufficient cooking appliance for a communal kitchen? I guess is the question, right?
Yeah, like a microwave just as a means for cooking, not adequate. They can obviously have a microwave,
Right.
but not just the only way.
I know, one of the properties I think of, one of the biggest dangers is the, like hot plates and stuff like that, and the cooktop hot plates, and they would prefer, well, like in rooms, hotel rooms and stuff, you don't have any of that because they're more fire danger than a microwave. So,
When we write cooktop in here, is the intent of that to be like a fixed cooktop as opposed to like a plug-in?
that's a good
cooktop?
question.
Because my
What?
thought was that I think, I thought at least the discussion was some sort of fixed cooking appliance that can't just be plugged into a wall was the minimum, but I don't know, I can't recall if that was ultimately like, you wanted to make that a minimum or if that was just a discussion. But when I think of a cooktop, I think of like just a hot plate plugged in the wall wouldn't really, like that is a safety hazard a lot of the time. But, there's a lot of units that are kitchenettes that have a fixed cooktop, it's not a full range and stove, with an oven and all that, but it is fixed and, turn the knob and it turns on, it's built into the cooktop. So that's maybe a distinction as well.
Not specify that.
So kitchen facilities shall include at minimum, maybe it should say fixed cooktop. Period. And then if they want to have a microwave, a stove unit, or equivalent cooking appliances, they do, because that would depend on, gosh, I would think they're electrical for one thing. I know some of them got pizza things that you could cook in too,
Yeah, I mean, if you
air
just,
fryers, all that stuff.
you could potentially put it just as like a, at minimum, fixed cooking appliance. And then anything else, you can obviously have as many plug-in appliances as you want.
That's minimum, yeah,
But
or a
it's-
full stove.
And then because
Yeah, I
then
see what
like
you're
it doesn't
saying.
specify it has to be stove, it has to be a fixed cooktop, something, so just a much simpler ways.
I like Dylan's suggestion.
It's a minimum,
If
yeah.
you guys like that fixed idea, fixed cooking appliance,
Okay,
makes the most sense. than
you guys agree? Yeah.
And I do think like to the point of like, maybe it'll be hard to get the wiring for a full stove, maybe, I don't know, I've never installed a fixed cooktop, that's more like fixed hot plates, but that might be easier to pull in a quick amount of time and install,
Yep, no, I like that.
not sure.
Good question.
This is makes it extreme, but no, you don't think anybody would try to like fix a microwave and say it doesn't fix?
No, because it's not a cooktop.
Well, what he
Well,
used
it's a
another.
fixed cooking appliance.
Yeah, like
Oh,
a
that's-
built-in microwave.
a
yeah.
fixed cooktop
I think that's
appliance.
minimum. Yeah.
Fixed cooktop appliance.
Yeah, unless you wanna say microwave is not an option or not adequate, you
No,
know?
because all the other equipment might not be adequate either, because it's
Well,
not
but they're saying
fixed.
at minimum. At minimum, that one that is just hooked up.
Yeah, I think you could either, you could do either or, you could say fixed cooktop appliance.
Yep.
Or you could say fixed cooking appliance, and then I could add a little Romanet subsection under this A that just says a microwave shall not be deemed to satisfy the requirements of this section. Either one.
But what about it, then they're gonna put an air fryer, why
Yeah.
not an air fryer?
It seems like the distinction is
You
it has to be
know?
something that
I
doesn't
mean, they
just.
will.
So I don't know if anybody in the room knows, like, the distinction that's made sometimes for the difference between like, let's say a wet bar versus a full kitchen or something is like, are the cooking facilities able to be plugged into a regular 110 volts outlet? Or do you have to have some sort of like additional, like a stove, you either have to have like a special plug for a stove that's the 220 volts, or you have to have a gas line. And so like in that case, like if you have a 220 volt, like you're not plugging a microwave into that if you're requiring that. I don't know if a fixed cooktop that's built into some of these like kitchenette, hotel, suite units requires a 110 or a 220, but that's a distinct, because like you can't regulate a microwave, you can't regulate an air fryer. Even if you said you're not allowed to have this, someone would plug it in, if you come for inspection, they'll take it out and hide it, you know, so, but we can definitely regulate based on a gas line or 220 volts or something like that, where it's something that has to meet electrical.
So all
plumbing
stoves
covenant.
need it.
Yes.
Google.
Yeah.
One thing somewhere.
I bet there is.
This is.
Yeah, I bet there is.
We're getting kind of into building.
My brain was
code kind of
drained
stuff,
after the
but-
contract.
I think just do fixed cooktop appliance.
Because I guess a stove is a fixed cooktop.
Yeah.
But it also has additional, you know, it seems like, I could see someone saying, hey, I built the microwave into the wall. That's true.
Clear County.
Good one, yeah.
Anything else?
That's all, perfect.
I think the suggested motion, we would have one in the packet.
This is just the motion approval, it's number blanket, I think it's 17,
Yeah.
Series 23 ordinance about.
Yeah, so the motion would be what's in the packet now. And then after code, with the amendment to section. I'm sorry, I lost my, to subsection D5A as directed to staff. I think would get us over the hump there.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Sure. Motion to recommend approval of ordinance number 17.
Yep.
Series 2024 ordinance adopting extended stay lodging licensing and operational requirements as a new section 21-35 of Idaho Springs Municipal Code with amendment to what was the subsection D5A as a recommendation from staff.
Perfect.
Second?
Third.
Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Katie Maxwell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ursula Kuzalek.
Yes.
Chair Cindy O.
Yes.
Hey, we did it.
We made it.
Yes.
Time.
Okay, any other items? If not, we will adjourn the meeting at 7:41 p.m.
Oh my God, it took forever. Thank you so much.
Did go
Thank
longer.
you.
I'm gonna leave my drawings here for you guys, if anybody else wants to. Just because they'll have to go to council.
Oh, yeah.
Just so you don't have to.
So they want my notes.
Well, the draw, that's why I said the drawing, because I write on, I always write on mine.
Which one, all of them?